Sometimes when you're looking for inspiration, it can help to relive old memories or visit places from your past that you have a lot of sentimental value attached to. I'm going to try that here today. Man, it feels good to be back here on my old bookshelf with my old books. My name is Michael Knipp, and the conversation starter I've been using for the past, couple months is, dang, 2022 has flown by insanely quickly. I don't think a single year of my life has ever flown by this fast before, but we are halfway through 2022, which means it's time for the mid-year Freakout book tag, where I talk about my experiences for reading for the first half of the year. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you like what you're seeing here, please consider giving this video a like and a subscription so you can see the books that I talk about here in the future. Thank you so much. But if you've never seen one of these before, the mid-year Freakout book tag is where we take a list of prompts that a lot of people who talk about books on the internet do every year, and they use these prompts to just gin up a discussion talking about a lot of the reads that they've had thus far. So just looking at the list of prompts, I'm going to dive right in. The first one is a doozy, but it brings up something that I was thinking about when I was considering making this video, which is I could probably make this entire video and every single prompt in it about the Cradle series, because the first prompt is, what is the best book that you've read in 2022? And dang, the Cradle series has impacted me in a way that I was totally not expecting. Even though tons of people were recommending the series for me, I was not expecting the greatness that is contained within the Cradle series and the way that it progresses in such an amazing way to tell such a beautiful story with so many complex characters, complex magic, in a world that is ever expanding through every single book in a way that's, it's so good. Even though it starts off and it's pretty good, but it's not amazing, the Cradle series is going to win my favorite read of 2022 thus far. When I started reading this series, I was planning on making a video review for every single book in the series, but the problem was that I only put out 2 videos a week, and that's in large part due to the fact that I only have time to do a couple videos every single week. But I was literally getting bottlenecked by the fact that I love Cradle so dang much that I didn't want to wait to read the next book until I had time to film a video review about it, and I have a really hard time talking about a book previously in the series without spoilers if I've already moved on in the series. So by the time that I filmed the video review for book 2, I'd already started book 3, and then by the time that I had time to film a video for book 3, I'd already blazed through a bunch more of the books, and I didn't have time to film for them. So I actually binged the entire Cradle series in the time that it would have taken me to film like books 3 and 4's reviews. Cradle is a wild ride, and it was crack cocaine to me in a way that a lot of books haven't been in a very long time. Since starting this booktube channel, I've often tried to spread series reads out so that I wasn't binging one single thing, and I was trying to keep diversity on the channel, but my pure addiction to this series had me read almost the entire thing in 2 or 3 weeks in a way that I haven't experienced since I was a teenage reader. I have a video review up for my thoughts on the first Cradle book and the second Cradle book, but they do not do a very good job of just fully embracing the excitement that I had for this series as a whole. And because I haven't taken the time to go back and talk about that series much, I don't think people realize just how much I loved the Cradle series. So I'm taking this opportunity to be like, hey, if anything I said in those first couple of videos sounds interesting to you, you should definitely read this series. And just note that every single criticism I had from book 1 and book 2 in those reviews is addressed completely by the future books in the series, and the series expands as a whole to a level unprecedented in any of my reads. And I don't think I'm being hyperbolic there. Go read freaking Cradle. The next prompt is, what is the best sequel that I've read in 2022? And I could just answer one of the Cradle books for this one, but I decided to go a different direction with it. When I'm answering the prompt for best sequel, I want to be able to highlight a book that takes what came prior in the series and just give it praise for how it got better in every single way. And like I said, I could use Cradle again for that, but instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about Stones of Light by Zach Argyle. The first book in the Threadlight series was really good and really enjoyable. I didn't have a lot of problems with it, but it didn't necessarily grip me in a way that some of the best fantasy series do. But Stones of Light just took all of the interesting kernels and threads that were introduced in the first book and blew them up in a way that made the series really, really interesting. So interesting, in fact, that as soon as I finished the book, I messaged the author on Instagram and said, hey, what do I have to do to be able to get into the arc send out for the book 3? Because I need to know what happens to these characters. If you're looking for a high epic fantasy with a new magic system that contains just the right amount of mystery and also character growth over the series in a multi-point of view story, I recommend checking this one out. It's a self-published book. Next, what is a new release that you want to read but haven't read yet? For this one, I'm going to throw out there The Kaiju Preservation Society. For me personally, the word kaiju evokes evokes the movie Pacific Rim, which I don't know what the general consensus on Pacific Rim was, but I loved it a lot. And the idea of a science fiction book built around preserving the kaiju culture and life in a biological way just sounded really interesting to me. Plus, one of my friends who hangs out over on the Discord, which is linked down below, Brady Flanagan, highly recommended this one, said it was a super great, quick read. I'm hoping that between some of my other reads, I can get to the Kaiju Preservation Society later on this year. Next, what is my most anticipated book for the second half of 2022? So I have a couple different options here. I'm a huge fan of Brandon Sanderson and the Cosmere, so of course I could say The Lost Metal, because Mistborn Era 2 was something that last year hit me completely by surprise. It was the fresh take on fantasy that I really needed at the time when I read it. And the way that it blends action and a different era of storytelling with the evolution of the magic system from Mistborn Era 1 was tight and awesome. Plus, I really fell in love with pretty much every character in that series in a way that I totally wasn't expecting. So I am super hyped for The Lost Metal coming out later this year, even though I have also made threats that if something goes a certain way in that book that I don't want it to, I will burn that book on a video. I think that probably hurts my chances of being able to potentially get that book early to review it, but I have to be honest and I have to be truthful with everybody. If you hurt Steris, Brandon Sanderson, well, the other book that I want to mention for this prompt is Upgrade by Blake Crouch. I am a huge Blake Crouch fan. Actually, Blake Crouch is largely responsible for helping me get back into reading in the first place. The Wayward Pines trilogy hit me with exactly what I needed at just the right time. And I also was a massive fan of both Dark Matter and Recursion. The way that Crouch handles breakneck science fiction thriller books just appeals to me on such a perfect summer popcorn movie level. I am sure that I'm going to love Upgrade. It actually comes out later this month. I am so excited for reading this when it comes out. Expect me to pretty much drop anything else I'm doing to get that book done. The next prompt is, what was my biggest disappointment of 2022 in the bookish realm? For this one, I'm going to talk about the book Harrow Lake, which on its face seems like a book that would be completely up my alley. I'm a huge fan of the Pacific Northwest story, aka like the original Twin Peaks series, otherwise known as like a small town that's hiding a lot of dark secrets and maybe potential like the darkness is all of us all along, but the darkness inside of us manifests as a physical, actual, fantastical paranormal monster. I love that freaking premise, and I will always love that freaking premise. The problem is that Harrow Lake really is something else in disguise, and I think subversion of expectations is one of those things that can go one of two ways. On the positive side, you could have something completely blow your mind by doing something you didn't expect. But Harrow Lake was kind of the opposite. Like, what if you wanted to buy a birthday present for your kid and you wanted to throw them off the scent of what they were actually getting, and you bought them a really cool toy, but you didn't want to tell them that. So instead you told them that you're going to be taking a family vacation to Disneyland and you're going to let them ride all these cool rides and meet their favorite Disney characters, and then when you gave them the gift, it was just a toy. Maybe if it had presented itself for what it actually was, it could have been something that could be received on a different level, but this book did the Disneyland plot twist thing. Getting back to the positive side of things, what was my biggest surprise read of 2022? And for that, I think I'm going to give an answer that I didn't start this series in 2022. I actually started it probably back in 2019, but I finished over half of it in 2022, and that's The Lunar Chronicles. The Lunar Chronicles was a wonderful, delightful science fiction fairy tale retelling that I was not expecting to enjoy just as much as I did. Speaking of series that made me lock onto them and finish them instead of bouncing between books in a series, The Lunar Chronicles was such a wonderful experience, and I said this in my video where I talk about The Lunar Chronicles specifically. I think this series deserves to be talked about by more people on BookTube more often, because yes, it was kind of old. It is a little bit older in the YA feel and genre, but it is just such a good way to take fairy tales and put a new spin on them and develop characters in a way that, oh, it was so great. And I cannot wait until my kids are old enough that I can read the Lunar Chronicles to them or let them experience them for themselves, because so good. The next prompt is, what is your favorite new author? This could be a new author or a new to you author, and I'm going to pick the easiest answer I can, which is Will White. He is the author of the Cradle series, which I've already praised in this video, but Will White's exemplary performance in the Cradle series has me interested in anything he continues to write in the future, as well as has me completely attached to the Cradle series personally until it's done, and I need it to be done. I need to know what happens. The way that book 10 ends with Reaper, it just recontextualizes everything in the series. Will White. is my favorite new author of 2022. Next, who is my newest fictional crush in 2022? And for that one, I'm going to answer John Cleaver from the John Cleaver series. John Cleaver is a really thoughtful guy. He has a lot of heart and he wants to do the right thing, but he doesn't always know how to do it. But he always spends a lot of time in his own head trying to figure out what he should do at any given moment. There's multiple romances in that series. And yeah, if you don't realize I'm semi-kidding here, John Cleaver is the main character in the John Cleaver series, as I said before. But the first book in that series is called I'm Not a Serial Killer, and it's actually a lot darker, and this is a joke answer, but I didn't know where else to fit the John Cleaver series in here. It was another series of 6 books that I read in 2 weeks. And yeah, John Cleaver, he's not exactly a great option for a crush, and maybe he's not a great option for a good person necessarily, but he's a good option for an amazing protagonist that I loved reading about and reading from his perspective, even if it made me profoundly uncomfortable and disturbed on so many levels. Next prompt, who was my new favorite character in 2022? And yeah, I'm going to go back to the Cradle series and talk about a character named Ethan Aurelius. And the problem with this prompt and this character is that he's a character that isn't even introduced until book 3 or book 4 of this so far 10-book series. And I can't really say anything about him without spoiling the series. But all you Cradle fans out there will know that Ethan is my favorite new character of 2022. If you're a Cradle fan, that's going to be like a duh answer. And if you heard me talk about Cradle so much in this video and I didn't mention Ethan as a favorite character, you would probably be mad. But I'll take this as another opportunity to go ahead and plug the Cradle series. Hey, go read Cradle. Ethan's pretty dope. Next prompt, what is a book that made me cry in 2022? Well, there's actually multiple options I could list on this, but I decided to pick one that I haven't already listed. I'm going to say Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. The plights that the characters go through in the second half of the Six of Crows series, it's an emotional journey, which is a little bit of a pun, and as anyone who's been in the Discord before knows, I hate puns, but the series is so emo. I believe the phrase that I used in my review for that book was Guardians of the Galaxy, but make it Hot Topic. So yeah, there's a lot of emotional things happening in this book. And even though it took me 2 years to read the sequel to Six of Crows, Crooked Kingdom did not disappoint. The happy moments that these characters went through, the sad moments that these characters went through, it was a ride, and it was a wonderful, wonderful ride. But it was also a ride that made me cry both happy and sad tears. As one of my favorite musicians would say, I'm not okay. The next prompt was, what is a book that made you happy in 2022? And this one was difficult because pretty much all these books made me happy. John Cleaver made me happy in a weird, dark sort of way. Cradle made me happy in so many ways. Crooked Kingdom, like I said, just made me happy in like some teary ways. I guess I'll mention that I read the self-published book about Fred the Vampire Accountant, and that made me happy because it's actually comedic in a lot of ways. That book is sort of broken into episodes like a TV show where each episode is separate, but there is an overarching story that happens between them all, but it is actually intended to be funny, and it did make me happy on more than one occasion. Next, what is the most beautiful book that I bought or received this year so far? And for that, I'm going to go with a book that my friend Chris sent me. The book is The Black Hawks by David Ragg. I absolutely love the hand-drawn art from this book. Ever since I first saw it on Goodreads, it has been one that has interested me. I have not read the book, but this is not what the prompt asks. It just asks, what speaks to me on a purely material visual level? I've made this statement before, but I really do think that most of the time we can judge books by their cover. Most of the books that I end up loving, I also love the covers for. A lot of times I'll pick up a book with a cover that I don't love, and frequently I don't love the book either. So yeah, I don't know why I haven't read this one, because it is one of my favorite covers of all of the books that are on my bookshelf. Not this bookshelf, the other one. But yeah, I absolutely love the cover of Black Hawks. And the final prompt is, what books do I need to read by the end of the year? And this is the prompt where I have to take a moment and say that I've never read a book by Joe Abercrombie. I own the entire First Law trilogy. I even started the first book in the First Law trilogy, but I didn't finish it. It wasn't the right headspace at the time. But this is a series that is essentially universally praised by everyone that I know, peers and people that I just follow. It's often called like the best grimdark. Abercrombie is also just called one of the best authors in fantasy. And I really would like to rectify the fact that I haven't read this trilogy by the end of the year. Make sure you guys hold me accountable. And that wraps it up. That's all the prompts. If you have any thoughts on what I've said here today, please let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button. And if you want to see me talk about some of those future books that I mentioned, please subscribe to the channel. Getting into reading a couple years ago has been such a wonderful experience for me, and the majority of that experience has to do not just with the awesome stories that I've got to experience, but also the people that I've got to experience those stories with. To anybody new who's just discovering my channel, I am so glad to have you here. Thank you so much for watching this video to this point especially. But I'd also like to take this moment to say, if you remember these freaking bookshelves behind me, thank you so much for sticking around and for watching my videos for these last couple years and for having fun conversations with me about some of the best stories I've ever experienced in my life with some of the best people I've ever met. Here's to an awesome second half of 2022. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, be excellent to each other.
Sleep, no one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep, no one ever get enough. If it don't show up, I might get fired. Sleep, no one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep, no one ever get enough. If I don't show up, I might get fired.